Now this is listed by all your mycology textbooks as being poisonous. And although it does have a toxin, it has ibotenic acid and muscimol. Both of these components are psychotropic chemicals. They're also polar molecules and they're soluble in water. The majority of the chemicals resides in the outer surface of this plant. Fungus, not really a plant. This is the very early stage of an Amanita Muscaria Formosa. Now hopefully I'll find some a little bit more advanced stage and I can show you the difference. Occasionally people mistake these for puffballs. Don't ask me why. But if we were to slice this in half, you could clearly see that this is not a puffball. This species right here doesn't really get people in a lot of trouble because it's not that toxic. You probably have to eat 50 or 60 of these things to kill you. I'm not even sure if there's any recorded deaths from this. Usually it just makes people sick, euphoric, intoxicated, like they drank a lot of alcohol. George Watson wrote an excellent book on this species of mushroom titled SOMA, S-O-M-A, and tried to connect it to the Rig Vedas from India with a plant or a substance that the Rig Vedas spoke of, which allowed you to communicate with God. Now, there's some shaman in Siberia that eat a variety of this called the Amanita Muscaria. Formosa refers to the yellowish coloration. On the west coast and in Siberia, you can get the species of this mushroom, muscaria, which is bright red, like the Mario Brothers mushroom. Now, an interesting thing happens when you take in muscimol and ibotenic acid into your body. Your body converts, metabolizes ibotenic acid into muscimol. So you end up having a little bit of those components that will affect your brain, but the majority of that gets peed out in your urine. So what the shaman in Siberia would do, because these mushrooms are really hard for them to get, they had to trade with southern tribes. And on years when the mushrooms were really rare, it was said that a single large Amanita Muscaria would fetch a complete reindeer. They would trade a whole reindeer for one of these mushrooms. So because these components were so rare and valuable, they would save their urine and then drink their urine to get intoxicated. I've also read stories of where they would feed this urine, they would put it in a little goat skin and they would feed it to the reindeer, and the reindeer liked it so much that sometimes they would trample people to death to try to get it. But we'll go and see if we can find a more mature version of this. All right, these are Amanita Muscaria Formosa that have come completely unfurled. They're absolutely beautiful mushrooms. And you can kind of tell on these, this isn't a very good way to do it, but this white material is the white spores that these amanitas give off because they're overlaid each other. You can see they're kind of, and actually, I don't know if you can make out on this one. Get in close to that. See, it did a spore print on top of the other mushroom. You can actually see the imprint of the gills that have produced the spores on this other mushroom. Now here we have some smaller. This is a really good spot for amanitas. We've got some little button amanitas, little babies that have just come up. Now when you pick these up, you can see the vulva. This is a good example of it right here. Now we're going to put these all together. If you were to take these 3 caps and eat these or make a tea out of them, you would get intoxicated to the point of like drinking a 6-pack of beer. And actually, if you were to sit down and eat all of these, you'd probably come close to communing with God. You would definitely have a euphoric experience. Now, some people are very sensitive to these mushrooms, and a number of people, upon consuming these, will first get a wave of nausea, some sweats on their forehead. Once that passes, some people even vomit, but once that passes, then they usually have a period of euphoria that lasts 3 to 4 hours. The active components in these mushrooms will give you, on top of euphoria, they also give you this weird time dilation thing. Time skips. Time seems to slow down or jump backwards and forward. It's kind of difficult to explain. But once again, I would urge you to exercise a great deal of caution before going out and picking these, because these mushrooms are also quite similar to another variety called Amanita panthera, which has the same active components, but is considered about 30 times more powerful. And if you were to mistake the Amanita panthera for the Formosa and consume a bunch of them, you could easily end up in the hospital or the graveyard, and not visiting the graveyard, buried in the ground graveyard. Now, a good way to store these is to pick these and then to dry them. So we're going to take all of these with us. What a magnificent mushroom, huh? Oh, I gotta say, they're one of the prettiest mushrooms. Look at the underneath of it. We'll keep that one separate and try to do a spore print of it. We'll get back to the house. We'll make an awesome spore print. Look at this one. Look at the underneath of this one. Look at that. That's beautiful, huh? Wow. Magnificent creatures. They really are. Oh, just gorgeous works of art. Look at this one right here. That's the granddaddy. God, that thing's got to weigh 2 pounds. That's a good size Amanita. If we'd left that a bit longer, it would have spread out a bit more. Boy, that is huge. It's really something. What you see here is a collection of Amanitas that we just got. It filled a 5-gallon bucket. Probably only took us like maybe 10 minutes to get them. Now, as I said before, the Amanita Muscaria is also known as the SOMA, which was written about in the Rig Vedas, which means right knowledge. This guy right here is a jack-o'-lantern. I'll put in the bottom bar its Latin name, but it kind of looks a little bit like chanterelles, but they're not. And this mushroom right here will make you sick, and it also bioluminescence at certain times of the year. Not all the time, but sometimes the stuff will glow really brightly, and people will see it off in the forest and they think it's an alien or Bigfoot eyes or fairies or something. But anyways, it does have a bit of a decurrent gill. But you can see chanterelles don't grow in this massive clump like this, one thing, and they don't have this shagginess to the stipe. Now this is a smallish giant puffball that I cut the bottom of it off. It's been in the refrigerator, and you can see it kinda looks like the button. Oh crap, my focus went out. But it kinda looks like the button version, a little bit of an Amanita. I'll cut one of these open and show you. Mushrooms, I've heard it said that a puffball, see, for one thing, that kind of sounds like you're cutting through styrofoam, and it's completely white on the inside, and there's no structure in there. Now, people they'll pick an Amanita. Now this is Amanita Muscaria, but if they were to pick Amanita Formosa, say for instance, which is all white, if they didn't cut it in half, see, that even sounds different. But if you look at the inside of this, there's some structure in there, delineating the cap and the hymeneum layer where the gills are going to be. And this is the stipe. It's got longitudinal fibers in it, which you don't see in the puffball. So there's quite a bit of difference between the two of them. You should always cut mushrooms up, and you should always do a spore print. I'll have to show you how to do that in a different video. But anyways, this will be the next step in the Amanita. Gets a little bigger. The universal veil is still protecting the gills, the hymeneum layer on this guy. So I wanted to show you guys the two biggest Amanita Muscaria that we collected today. This is colossal. This is a magnificent specimen right here. Both of these are magnificent specimens, but you can see what's called remnants of the universal veil. That's what these little white spots are, now there's a type of Amanita that's edible and highly sought after called Caesar's Amanita. The main difference between Caesar's Amanita and Amanita Muscaria is that Caesar's Amanita, the universal veil doesn't stick to the cap. Now the problem is that, as you can see, I can wipe these spots right off. See, they're just pieces of membrane left over from when the vulva expanded. A heavy rain will wash off these spots, and people have mistaken the Muscaria for Caesar's Amanita because it doesn't have spots on it. The coloration is also highly variable. These are for Muscaria Formosa, but you can see this one is more yellow and this one's quite a bit more red. I've seen these before that were just magnificent, looked like a setting sun or something. They were so bright, especially when the cap expands. But these truly are magical mushrooms.